everybody. Thanks for coming to a new episode of Writers Drinking Whiskey. My guest today, and I'm going to pray that I hit this name because I did practice beforehand, is Ioanna. I tried to get 3 syllables. Ioanna.
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 Mm-hmm.
Closer? No, I'm sorry. Arka, or
yes.
Somewhat close. And thank you so much for coming. And welcome to the whiskey bar here. So maybe you could just take a second here and tell us about yourself.
Hi, so I'm Ioanna. I am Greek. One of the many things I do is write books and other stuff. This is why I'm here. About myself. I live in Germany. I'm a multicultural European, part of everything and nothing. And I love the English language, as you might imagine, since
sure,
I couldn't imagine writing in any other language, and that surprises even me. I'm a physicist. I have a PhD in astrophysics. Don't ask why. But my love has always been books.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a bit of many things.
Right.
Yeah,
that makes perfect sense. Like astrophysics to like writing books. Like I think like in university they're next to each other in the quad, right? It's like
not
string
really.
theory 101.
No. It's
the
a
art
bit
of the
problem.
short story right next door.
So I worked a bit in climate science, and by that point I had started being more active in writing and editing for others, which is still mind-boggling to me why native speakers would ask me to edit for them, but they do. I don't know.
Believe it.
So they do ask me,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Sure.
So it's still very strange to me, I mean, they know better. But
I'm not so sure. Having like grown up in an English speaking land here, like I'm not so sure everyone speaks it better than you do or understands it better.
I don't know. What can I tell you?
It could be a problem.
Anyway.
But
then you start reading papers, because that's what you do in science. You read scientific papers by other authors, and then your hair starts falling out because their English is mostly abysmal, because the scientific community is mostly non-English speaking. And then you're like, oh my God, just that word doesn't mean that, and that's not the syntax, and why this comma? And at the point where I started thinking more about the language than the physics, I realized it was probably time to go. Know what I mean?
Sure, that makes sense. And when you were practicing, it sounds like you're a recovering astrophysics.
I am
physicist now.
I teach now, quite. So I teach math now. So
well, there you go. Okay, so mildly
that's very
recovering.
Good. That's very nice though, because you don't. It's completely different from trying to do research.
Sure.
It's just dealing with kids and trying to make them understand stuff is challenging, of course.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But the subject matter is very definite and very easy.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So it's a completely different exercise, and it's way more fun than trying to, to force
back engineer alien spacecraft, right? That's what all of us laymen.
No, I was a theorist.
Do.
This is mostly this is mostly making toy models and playing around with parameters until it looks similar to nature, which it never does. It's a different kind of game. Yeah.
Right.
And climate science is a whole different thing.
I'm sure. And so what are we drinking today?
So I'm drinking a local whiskey from the Slurs distillery. That's close to a nice lake that's called Schliersee here in Bavaria. So we have it all. We have the mountains, we have the lakes, we have the Alps, we have the waterfalls, and we have our local
and the whiskey
product.
Very good. And I have to say, I am so excited about this because after I've done a handful of these episodes, you're the first person drinking whiskey with me. So it's everyone's been drinking, but you're the first person to get the whiskey. So I will definitely, let me bring the glass I have up here. Cheers.
I'm drinking it from a shot glass. Cheers.
Yeah, cheers.
Again, shot glass, because I can't handle a lot of alcohol. I'm a very small person, so I need a tiny glass to drink whiskey out of. But this is really good. I didn't think I liked whiskey, but I do like this a lot.
Oh, Very good. I'm gonna have to try that one. Have to see if I can get that in the States.
Yeah, I really don't know if they export. I might have to find out for you. It's really nice though. You can of course visit and
exactly.
There's so much beauty here. Bavaria is a just magical place. You can't imagine the beauty. I didn't know it before I lived here actually. And don't get me wrong, Greece is beautiful, but also Bavaria, it's just stunning. You know, I go on a walk and I'm by a lake looking at Zugspitze, which is the highest mountain in Germany in the Alps. And every time I'm very thankful that I ended up here.
Right. Yeah, that does sound beautiful. So if I was to visit Bavaria, what is like the one thing I have to do? Like the non-touristy, unless it's a touristy thing. Yeah.
I will tell you what the one thing is that you should not do. You should not go to the Disney Castle Neuschwanstein, because this is where you will find all other Americans that are not in America right now.
Okay.
So it will be too crowded. And if you don't enjoy this kind of thing, maybe don't go there. Ooh, what you should visit in Bavaria. Okay. I am a nature lover, so I would say you go to one of the prettiest gorges in the area.
Okay.
If I have to pick, you know, there are other people who have lived here longer, have visited more places, but pick a wonderful gorge like the Patnach Gorge and just go and enjoy the mountains, the lakes, the waterfalls, the nature.
Very good. All right, I will remember that. And I have a recipe here. So full disclosure for our audience here. So you're in Bavaria. I'm in California. I'm in La La Land, right outside of LA here. So it's morning for me. I do have my my green spot is what I'm drinking right now.
Oh, okay.
Really, really good Irish whiskey. But I'm actually going to make a quick coffee drink for everyone. And it's going to be fairly simple here. It's going to be, if anyone drinks the Irish cream cold brew coffees at Starbucks. They have these, Starbucks has the coffees where they put some cold cream on the top. This is going to be a hard version of that. So let me see if I can maybe move this just a little. I'll do my best to share this with everyone, and I'll put the drink in the show notes here. But basically, we're going to have heavy whipping cream. It'll be about 2 tablespoons of this. You can also use just like some 2% milk if you wanted a little lighter. I actually would have gone 2% milk, but being a writer, I'm also a bit of a space cadet, and I didn't realize we were out. So we're using heavy whipping cream today. Then I have the little bottle of some Bailey's Irish cream here. I'm going to put the whole thing in. Typically, I would say 2 tablespoons of this too, but you want more Bailey's if you're going to be drinking at 10 a.m.
It's basically milk, isn't it?
Exactly. And then in here, you can see it. It's just a little bit of cocoa powder and some malted milk. So, and I usually, to keep that from clumping, I'll strain it before I put it in there. And then you just take the handy little whipper.
Yes. Oh, very fancy.
See if I can get it without getting myself too much here.
Yes.
Just whip it up a little. And then it is just a matter of coffee cup. We're going to make this very Irish, so that green spot is also going to be a spot in my cup. Little cold brew, which you can buy, or you could just, I have a little easy pitcher for it, but fill the cup up, top it with that. And then my cream will go right on top. And then the very last thing to make it extra fancy, like you would get at a cafe, is you can take a little strainer and just strain a little bit of cocoa right on top. Because then the cream and the chocolate go nice together. And we will see if I can get, that's the finished product there.
Enjoy.
Yeah, I will. And I still have that straight green spot over there, which is, I'll be drinking both because it's 10 a.m. and, when in
That's what you do in the morning, right?
That's what you do.
Obviously.
Exactly.
I get that.
All right. So you're writing. You have,
sometimes.
I think how many books now?
Okay, let's see. It's 4 of my own books plus 1 anthology. Okay, book number 1, A Natural, which wrote itself. It wasn't me. I will explain. Book number 2, which is the second part of book number 1. And yes, this is a whip that you are seeing there. It is. So this is book number 3, Until we meet in Denver, which this is mental masturbation for people trying to understand how neurodivergent they are. I will come to this. Then I got together with some other people and we published, an anthology that's quite explicit. It has everything. It has lesbian, gay, straight, self stuff, whatever.
Sure.
And because I had a period of non-writing this year where I discovered I was actually neurodivergent and I finally understood why nothing was working with my life. I thought I would get into writing again by writing a small thing, which is a novella. And this is this one. And this is, I've changed the cover now because this is an 80s cover and we need a 2020s cover. But yeah, I'm old fashioned, you can tell, right?
Sure. I love the 80s too. So. If I could make all my covers 80s, I would do it just for the hell of it.
Yeah, now I created something more trendy, which is up on Amazon. And this is like a romance novella that plays out in the University of Athens and a little bit in a fantasy world. It's a bit of a speculative fiction. The first 2 are, as our common friend Dario informed me back when we met, basically textbook transgressive fiction, which I didn't know. I just, what happened was I got into a state of what I now know is ADHD hyperfocus, and I just wrote for 5 months straight. But I literally mean that. There were barely breaks, sometimes no breaks to eat, go to the bathroom and sleep. Like the world stopped existing until this book came out. And since then I was trying to figure out what's wrong with me, because that's first of all, that's not normal. And secondly, other things were happening and were getting worse in my life, which brought me to the ADHD diagnosis. And I'm a really bad case of it, apparently. So, and then we have the mental masturbation, navel gazing, what the fuck is wrong with me, which poses as a book about a boy, but it's not really. It is a bit or a lot.
Sure.
But it's complicated.
Sure.
So we have 2 novels, 1 novella, 1 anthology, and whatever this is. And you see, my connection to the United States is a bit more severe than you would have imagined, because this is called Until We Meet in Denver. Can I give a spoiler?
Of course.
Yes, we didn't meet in Denver.
Oh no. I thought that would be like at least the epilogue. You show up in Denver.
Oh, but there's enough.
It's the airport scene.
Okay. The people who lived through the events of this book with me, my friends, my loved ones, and the people who read it afterwards have a very strong opinion on that. And the opinion is, don't you ever dare set your foot on Denver, and if I ever find him, I will just, like a Greek friend of mine, she has the rolling pin, and the Greek woman with the rolling pin is a picture. It's like, I will take the rolling pin. That was her reaction. So that's all I'm going to say. Maybe
my grandmother's first generation from Italy, and there would be a rolling pin in there. Yeah.
Perfect. Yes.
Smacked with that thing more than once. So
I see. I don't hit people. Let me make this clear. I'm not violent. My rolling pin I only use it for making food. So
well, there you go. Until you have grandkids, and then that's when it kicks
I still have, it's still some way off, but yes. Let's see.
Yeah.
Did you have a rolling pin used on you?
Oh, I did. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
What's funny about it is, so I'm a grandparent. I have 2 young grandkids, but I benefit from being, I'm 6'2", like 240, right? Like my I'm the biggest like teddy bear, so like my grandkids just get whatever they want, you know, and I just love on them. But
that's good.
When they go over to like my mom's house, like my grandson's 3 and he's a little bit into the terrible 3 kind of age, and she like can't control him. And like he'll like want to pinch her and do these things. I'm like, Mom, you need like the wooden like spoon or something. Like you gotta be the mean grandma, because you know, with me, I think there's still like an intimidation factor that I'm literally looming over you. With her, like,
I see.
Sweet old lady, and he's just like,
to be tall.
I want what I want. Yeah. I mean, that's the one time, that and getting something from the top of the aisle, that it works out. You need to fly in a plane, it's no good. So.
I mean, I'm 5'2" and I barely fit on a plane. I don't know how normally sized people do it. Like I'm tiny and it's still cramped.
Oh,
I have no idea.
Yeah, it's rough. My wife is 5'2" as well, and we'll go and she'll sit in the middle seat and she's okay. But
it's okay, but it's not comfortable.
But she always makes some room for me so I can kind of stretch my leg or something on her side or something, because it's just.
But do you know what I feel envious of? Like the stretching your hand and actually turning on the light. I'm so envious of, like. I just need a couple of centimeters. Oh wait, we're talking in inches now. Yeah, like an inch would be fine, right? I would be fine. Just one.
Sure. Right.
Wouldn't need more, but this just trying to reach the button is just horrible. And in Germany, the other thing that happens to me in Germany, because Germans are taller than Greeks, you go to a restroom somewhere, restaurant, public space, and my feet don't touch the ground when I see it.
Really?
Yeah, and it's like, okay, but I'm a grown person, like I'm an adult.
Right, exactly. Really.
So weird. Really, you feel like it's, or you can't see yourself in the mirror, like the mirror is here, and I'm like,
right.
This happens in Germany.
Did you have school buses when you were a kid?
Well, I had one because I happened to go to a private school which had buses, because they were, herding us from the whole of Athens.
Oh,
but
sure.
I don't know if other people probably didn't.
It always reminded me of that. Like what my generation is kind of one of the last ones in our area that had school buses. They got rid of them, and now everyone has to drop the kids off. But it always, anytime I sit like that, it reminds me of being a kid, because then you can touch the ground. You like sit on it. So I can just imagine how the toilet would be, like kicking your legs, not touching the ground. And
I'm not reminded of anything, because that's my current life. It never went away. Right. I'm an okay sized person in Greece. Like 5'2" is okay. I mean, I'm a little bit on the short side, but not very much so. Here in the south of Germany, it's fine. Okay, still fine. In the north of Germany, it's not fine anymore. It's like you are a midget, like you are tiny.
Sure. It's interesting how that goes. It seems like as you go north, people start getting bigger, and then you go south again, maybe as well. Like it's this some inverse thing.
Or east. You go east, they get, and it happens really fast. Like in the Middle East, people are already quite a bit shorter. It's basically Western and Northern Europeans that are tall. It's basically North Europe. That's all.
Sure.
Okay. The rest of humanity is like normal sized,
Right. So
to me.
So you were an astrophysicist, and then now you're writing erotica. It begs the question. No? Okay.
I'm not writing erotica. I never wrote erotica.
What's a better term for it?
So again, I will trust our friend Dario's opinion, who said this is like textbook transgressive. And the point is, I'm shooting myself in the foot here, but I never read erotica, and I never did read erotica. And I, with my new imprint that I started a while back, I would like to host people who actually write erotica, but in a very different way than it's it's been done.
Right.
Like
I get what you mean.
In my opinion, I wrote about psychology because that's my thing. I'm neurodivergent. I struggled for 40 years until I got a diagnosis. My life almost fell apart because of ADHD. Because ADHD, if you leave it untreated, it gets worse and worse and worse until you either find out or it kills you. People don't realize what a disability this is. It's just you have no clue, right? So to me, it was always about psychology. So I wrote about psychological processes, and it just so happened that at that point the processes were who am I, what do I want from life, from my sexuality, from the other people, and this was very, very explicit. Right. And how do I connect my sexuality with the rest of my life, and what is taboo and what is not taboo, and what do other people think and why do they think it, and how is it okay to live the subject of consent, which is really, really discussed to exhaustion in both books between the protagonists. These are the things I wrote about. Now, is it arousing? I suppose it is, because people tell me it is.
Right, sure.
But it just came out this way.
Right. Well, and it's very different in the sense of what you're describing is actually more in line to not get into the specifics, right? Because there's like 1,000 genres and subgenres.
I am very specific. Like I am really very explicit, but
sure. Right.
Again, it happened.
No, what I mean is there's like, you can say there's fantasy, then there's epic fantasy, right? You can kind of keep splitting things down.
Yes.
But what you're describing with like really getting into the psychology and societal factors, right? What's taboo, what's not taboo, what's consent, or kind of cultural things. It's almost more literary fiction in that sense, right? Sure. Like there might be sexual themes and situations, but that's secondary to the inner processing of the characters. Am I wrong? Or
I suppose it depends on who reads it.
Secondary, maybe completely intertwined. But
a book is the readers, it's not the authors, right? So it depends on who reads it. There were tons of men mostly, and mostly, middle-aged and older men who appreciated these books a lot because they were very sexy. Okay, that happened. It depends on who reads it. Sure. It really depends. Like there were people who read it and was like, oh my God, the conflict. Do I trust? Do I not trust? Because there's like in the first book, there's this huge conflict. I don't like making things very clear for others. I like people to just reach their own conclusions.
Right.
So there is this thing of what's the intent of our main character, the male main character? Is he like you? There's a whole range, right? Either I'm a fucking manipulative, narcissistic asshole sociopath, or I made mistakes. I don't know what I'm doing. I really mean well, but I don't know how to treat these things properly. It could be anything. And some people got really hung up in that and were thinking like, what is it? What is it? What is it? And other people are like, ooh, that's sexy. Who? Everybody has their own own takeaway from this. So it's fine. I don't mind. Like at this point I wouldn't have written this book again, the first book or the second book, which is even more explicit if it's possible. But that doesn't mean very much.
Sure. No, I mean that it's brilliant in the sense, I just 2 weeks back I was presenting at a writing festival. And the topic I presented on was I'm going to butcher the name, but it was wielding ambiguity in fiction, kind of the power of the unsaid, and then the power of leaving it to the audience's imagination, kind of presenting them with a scenario and then letting them decide what the characters mean and things.
Some people don't like that at all.
Some people don't. No. I think sometimes it's unfortunate because it's kind of the commercialization, the corporatization of art in so many ways. It's they want something spoon-fed to them, and it needs
writing by numbers, I call it.
Exactly. Yeah. They
Writing
want
by
that
numbers.
formula, and then they mock the formula.
Sells.
Yeah. Right. So, but that's beautiful. I like the I like the concept a lot of giving them, because I think it invites them in so much more. Right. Like,
but again, none of this is intentional. You shouldn't talk to me as a person who knows what they're doing, because I
well, I don't believe that completely. Like, I think there's two ways of knowing. There's subconsciously, right? Exactly. Or unconsciously you have it, and you just, it's not intentional all the time. It's this, maybe it's intentional, but not consciously intentional all the time. And then there's just being a natural at it, like your book, to where it's just, you have a natural talent and things speed up.
This is what Dario always tells me. I wrote a book called The Natural, and Ioanna, you are that. And I'm like, okay, but this was like, I refer to something completely different by using, anyway.
Sure.
The thing is, I have read a lot of books, many books, and you internalize some stuff, right? So if you have a feel for these things, you know how to write a story after reading 1,000 books. No, this is I know that this sounds very arrogant, but I have the feel for that. I just by nature, just like I have a feel for math, just like I fail in finance. Like, if you explain finance to me, I know math. Like, I'm awesome in math, like advanced math. I know general relativity, quantum physics. Finance, it just doesn't stick. So
you're like E equals MC square. You have that, but when they're like APR percentage, you're like, I don't know. Don't talk to me.
I have that. That's easy. Easy. But finance, like, how, why? That's hard.
Right.
Also because it's mostly random, and randomness does not agree with a very organized brain. So this is one of the things that just happens. Like, it has happened a couple of times. I have sat down, and when I sit down, I know the beginning and the end. I know what happens. I know what has to happen. I know that where the drama has to be. I know the conflicts, but that's all a part of the psychology, because psychology is kind of my thing, and I have never thought about creating a complicated plot, for example, like you would do with a fantasy book. I've never even touched that, because the whole reason I ever wrote anything is to do, self psychoanalysis, basically, and nothing more. Or it was because my ADHD brain hyper-focused on one thing, and it just had to get out. So there's a thing in ADHD that's called maladaptive daydreaming. And it happens to the ADD people like me, who are not necessarily very hyperactive, but mostly completely their brain is away. So it happened to me at one point that I was away. Like, I would go to work. I worked in climate science. I would go there. I would look at the window. Hours would pass. I would go for a walk. Hours would pass. I would drive, and I would just run, past red lights, traffic lights. Like, my brain was. I always had that, even as a child. Like, the daydreaming was very, very, very strong in me, and it was a way to converse with myself, or with imaginary people in my brain who were, of course, part of myself, about things, about this subject we talked about, the consent and identity, and maybe justice, or things, general things. And at that point, it was 2018, I think. It just went bonkers, out of control. Like, it just became dangerous, right? Like, in the street, or I had to take care of my kids, and I was lost. So I spoke to a friend who has had hallucinations before, and I told her, help, I'm not having hallucination, but my brain is just not, it's just gone. It's just somewhere else. What do I do? And she said, write it down. So I started writing stuff down, and then the ADHD hyperfocus took over, and I didn't stop for 5 months, and then I booked them out. So these things happened without my intention, without my trying to produce a book, without me wanting to. And then when the first was out, and I thought, oh, who cares? I uploaded it. I've uploaded it on a kind of self-publishing website, and they just chucked it out onto the market with a weird cover and with not much care on it. I went on Twitter, and I found people like Dario, and they were like, wow, like this is good. Did you like how many hundreds of thousands of words did you write to reach that level? And I said, I didn't. Like, I've written like 2 scientific papers and that's it. I have never written anything else. And they were like, oh my God, wow, that's impossible. I don't know how you do it. And I was like, okay, maybe I'm not that bad at it, because at the beginning I was mortified and I had tons of people read it because I was afraid I'm a foreign speaker. My English is not good. Do I have my prepositions right? Is my grammar okay? I had no idea. Like I was looking up prepositions like crazy. I thought I was doing everything wrong. So after that, and after all this happened, and I had this overwhelmingly positive response from a few people, I thought, okay, can I do this again? Can I reproduce this? Like, or is it something that I got into the hyperfocus? It happened. My brain cleared up. The fog cleared up. I was able to drive in the street again, and that was it. So the story was half finished because I reached the halfway mark before, after the 90K words mark. So I thought I wrapped it up there. So there was still the other half of the story, and I just sat for a month or two and I finished it. And this was the second book. And Dario and my other, enablers, I will call them, said, a natural was okay, but I like this more. And I was like, okay, I can do it. Like I can probably do
Sure.
this. Now, do you get a living out of it? No.
Really?
Do I have a day job? Yes. I just like to keep writing for fun.
Sure. Well, I always think sometimes people get maybe especially in the Western world, but in general, we get way too into professionalizing everything. So it's like I've been fortunate enough to win like a few writing awards, these things. I don't make a living off of it. And like I think of myself a lot of times like a hobbyist, because it keeps me sane. Like you can love golf.
Yes.
You can golf all the time. You can spend money on it. You get really passionate about it, but you don't think you're suddenly going to be Tiger Woods and make millions of dollars at it. Like potentially that can happen to tiny percentages of people, but I just look at it for the love of it. Like I do this show because it's fun. It's fun for me to get to meet new writers and like just chat and get to meet people. Yeah. So I just look at it like it's passion. Do it, enjoy it. If you ever make a living off of it, awesome. But if you make it everything about.
But if you start making a living out of it, you will start writing what you think people want to read, and that you will not get out of this. Like this is psychology. You will start having it in the back of your head, won't you? That's what I always think. And you start thinking, like I said before, but this cover is very 80s, and maybe I should change the cover, and this kind of thing, because you throw money into this, right? Right. And this over professionalizing is a huge problem. And really let me say, as a European, this is a very American thing. Like we can't do anything if we can't monetize it, which is it's crazy. I started doing ballet when I was 36. Honestly, I go to the to classes with kids now, and if my daughter, who is 12, wanted to do ballet now, she can't. She can't, because either you start at 4 or 5. And the kids her age are too advanced, and she would have to go to the 6-year-olds, and she can't go to a class with 6-year-olds, or she just can't. So even here, even in a small, town ballet school, which is really good, but it's not really the Bolso,
Yeah, sure.
You can't start a hobby like this when you're 12, which is not okay. This is absolutely not okay, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. I that happened especially when I was growing up in America. Everyone suddenly became convinced their kid was going to get a scholarship for X sport. So it's like they would put their kid in football, and their kid had to get a scholarship to football. Regardless, it's like some tiny percentage. There's like,
can we have fun?
Right, I know. It's like, can you play a sport? Learn the
no. The answer is no. You can't have fun. No,
right? No,
you're not allowed to. Fun. No, it's forbidden.
You have to make money. The only fun is making money.
Yes, and you have to. And the other strange thing about American scene, I'm going to a different subject now, is that a couple of months ago there was this silent silent quitting or silent, like this was the kind of striking, like that people work 8 hours and then didn't work anymore. Right. Which is what people in Europe do normally. Like, you know, you have your 8-hour day, you clock in, you clock out. And if you work too much more, the state comes and they put a fine on your employer because you're not supposed to work more, because studies after studies have shown that you don't get more productive by working yourself to death. You get less productive. You know, there's a sweet spot. And the sweet spot is probably even less than 40 hours a week, actually. There are studies. So this mentality, which has infiltrated academia and which was one of the reasons that I hated it. Okay, it's very strong. But I didn't really enjoy working in academia. It's like, look at me, I work more than you. Look at me, I was here at 7 o'clock in the morning and I left at 9. Ha, I'm a great scientist. No, you aren't. You're just there. You just exist there in the office and maybe produce something, but you're going to be judged on the merits of what you produce, which again doesn't happen in science these days, but that's a whole different kind of worms that I won't get into now. I could complain about this forever. So I'll stop here.
Right. So I did want to go back to a little bit, like, so how you discovered writing, because it sounds like you discovered writing, and always correct me if I say something wrong, and I'm sure I'm generalizing
by accident.
So you discover it by accident. You're writing a natural, and then that also coincided later on, it sounded like, if I get the chronology right here, with your ADHD diagnosis. ADHD.
So I was always a writer, I think, because if you look back and what happened is the following. So I thought about this when this happened, because I went from physics to something completely different, you know, and I thought about this, and I always read books as a child. This was my thing. Like, my thing was not doing experiments and, you know, okay, I like doing math in my holidays. That's one thing. That was fun. It's like solve puzzles.
So fun. I'm going to have to show this to my 11-year-old son. My 11-year-old son just started junior high, and he was homeschooled. I homeschooled him from about 2nd grade. So he's 6th grade. So about those 3-4-ish years there. And we did math and things, and he was fine with it. But then when you go to school here, you go to school for 6 hours, you take homework home, you got to do that homework. And he was struggling with the math because there was like so much of it. He's doing better now. We've gotten into better habits. A lot of it was habits, but hearing him hear someone say, I did math for fun, like, he's never going to believe that. So I'm going to replay this video for him. I may have him give you a call. Yeah.
Fine. I know math in 3 languages now, so he can give me a call if he wants to. You know, I grew up in Greece, studied in Greek, I studied in English. Now I'm teaching kids in German, so you know, I know all the math that the 11-year-old needs. Yeah. So to get back to what I was trying to say, when I thought about this, I realized I was always reading. And what about in Greece, you choose your general direction of studies when you're 16. And I was like, I remember that there was this time when I was like, am I going to study linguistics because I always loved languages, or am I going to study physics because it's exciting, you know? And my math and physics teachers were like, you with your brain to go to literature? No, like, no way. You are smart. You are intelligent. You have to study physics or maths or something like that. So there is a kind of pressure that settles on you if you have this smart brand to go and do, you know, impressive stuff, engineering, physics. And I always, like, the thing I always did was read books and learn languages. I was amazed by linguistics, by the way languages connected. I learned Swedish at some point. I have started to learn at points in my life French, Italian, Icelandic, like Arabic. It all you know, it all didn't work because of the ADHD. That's the other problem. But this was always my thing. And I realized it wasn't weird at all, because I was basically pushed by myself, by society, by my teachers into a direction that was something I could have done if I didn't have the complete lack of focus and drive that it comes with ADHD, because I failed miserably in science. Because you have to self-motivate in science. That's the only thing that keeps you going on if you're not in a group, in a close-knit group, is self-motivation. And I didn't have that. Like, I didn't care very much. And I remember writing things as a child. Like I remember I wrote a poem, when I was 6 years old, and then when I was 10 years old to my teacher, and then I would write like stories in Greek for fun when I was at school. And interestingly, one or two did have erotic content, which is weird if I think about it now. It seems that these issues were in my brain back then, and it just all stopped. Like I stopped painting. I used to paint when I was a child. It all stopped. They push you into the you are smart direction.
They push you out of the arts when you're smart.
They do, don't they?
There's no money there. Push you into the science where you can help humanity.
No, and it's not smart. It's not intelligent. You can do art if you're not intelligent. See?
Sure.
And if you're intelligent, you have to use your intelligence to do math. It's all math and science and tech, and you be a doctor or a lawyer or something. And I don't know how lawyer fits into this, because again, it has to do with language. So these people are making an exception there.
Yeah, I know. Really, they are. Yeah.
But I think it was logical. Like I think it had have been left to my own devices, I would probably have studied linguistics. But society and stuff.
Sure. Right. Cheers to that. So